All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. I'm Bev Durgan. I'm the current chair of ECOP, and I'm very happy today that we are having a conversation about opportunities for internationalizing extension. I know many of you either have international programs, working on international programs at your university and within your extension system, or are looking at those. So I think this will be a great opportunity for us to hear about what is happening with the system internationally, and also to have an opportunity to ask questions. So first of all, I would like to thank Sandy Rubel. Many of you know Sandy for her help in scheduling this meeting today. So with that, Sandy, we'll go to the next slide. For those of you that have been on a First Friday event in the past, you know that this is an event that happens the first Friday of every month. It's organized by ECOP, and it's an opportunity for the 1890 Extension administrators and deans and directors from the 62s and the 1994s to have a conversation and update what's happening in the system, and also just, again, for all of us to see each other, since we don't get together formally here more than once a year. Next slide, Sandy. Also, a reminder for all of you that if you haven't yet registered for our National Dean and Directors meeting for 2023, that the registration is up. You can see the website there. Again, thank you for our planning committee and also Sandy for all your work on this. It's October 10th through the 12th in Tucson, and we were just talking about how hot it is everywhere, so we're expecting Tucson to be pleasant for that time that we're in our meeting. So if you haven't registered, please do so. Next one. All right, so today we have two panels that will lead our discussion about extension and working internationally. I will introduce the first panel, that they will have a presentation, and then we will have some time for a couple questions. Then we'll move on to the second panel. So you can raise your hand, but you could also put a comment in the chat section, and Sandy and I will take a look at that and make sure that we gather those questions. As always, there'll be a survey at the end of the session today. Please complete that if you can. We always like to get feedback on what type of topics you would like to see on the first Friday. And you can visit the ECOP Monday Minute blog for the recording of this information. All right, Sandy. So today, our first panel will be discussing, and for some of you that have not, do not know about this network, is the North American Agricultural Advisory Network. And we have three people that will be discussing that today. This is this organization was developed, this advisory network was developed to promote engagement among the US, Canada, and Mexico agricultural and rural development advisory services. So APLU, Doug Steele is representing APLU on the steering committee. We also have Carrie Conway, who is the secretariat, also the special advisor to the chancellor and director of international agriculture, Colorado State University at their new Spur campus, and Rebecca Papora, program associate, international agriculture, Colorado State University. So we're very pleased to have the three of them joining us today. And Doug, I think that, are you starting out the conversation? So
yes, I will. Thank you.
I'll turn it over to you. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Beverly, and thank you to the ECOP Executive Committee for inviting us to be a part of the session today. We are also joined by another member of the NON, that's that David Nielsen. So you may see another face that's not quite so familiar. And we have the challenge of, in 20 minutes, to tell you what we've done over the last 3 years. And we spent a lot of time getting organized, the structural things that you have to do to be successful, and a couple exciting announcements that Carrie will make at the end of our presentation. So Rebecca, if we can go to slide 1, please. So we identified a need for NON and the work that we do. There's a group called GFROS. I think many of you, if you're involved in international agriculture, probably familiar with that. They really have an international focus on working with small communities and rural and economic development. We were the only continent, not just continent, but North American, Canada, Mexico, and the USA did not have a member association to be part of GFROS. And so NON kind of started growing out of that because we saw a great opportunity to bring our countries together. And the focus really is on, as Bev said, a North American Agriculture Advisory Network, and how can we create structures. And we're unique in the United States because we have our land grant universities, but how could we create structures to make sure we're passing on some of the best world-class research and outreach and engagement to specifically small-scale producers throughout our countries. Next, Rebecca. So this is what overall it looks like. There's the other 16 and what continents and what regions that they cover. And we're excited now to be a part of this global network. Next, Rebecca. So we picked to begin with three key thematic areas that we're going to work on. Biodefense and management of natural disasters. Obviously, those cut across all three of our borders. Improving soil and water management, and building skills and career development for youth. And we thought that was one unique theme area for us, because we all know that we're going to begin to struggle with that next workforce. And how can we use our current systems, especially 4-H and the Manners program with minority students, to attract people to look at careers within agriculture. Next. So this is how we do our work, and this is what we wanted to share with you, because many of you have heard us talk before and maybe have a somewhat working knowledge of NON and what we do, but yeah, we're at a point now as we push out public, we want to help you to help us look at how we make this become a reality for North America. And so part of it is what we're doing is developing this knowledge and management area. Really our specialists and extension specialists talking to each other. How can we create a greater relationship between the stakeholders in North America, and then have that interaction with our world partners? And then finally, how can we look at policy and advocacy for all three of our countries on what we can do to advance the work of extension in all three countries, but more importantly, reach stakeholders that might be aware but have not been engaged and utilized in ag advisory network in the past, such as extension. Next. So this is a non-steering committee, and I'm going to pass it over to Carrie to kind of lead through how this whole thing got organized.
Thank you, Doug. As you can see, good afternoon, everyone. We have the three current secretaries and ministers of agriculture who serve as ex officio members for us. When we submitted these slides, we just learned actually last week that Lawrence Macaulay, former Ag Minister for Canada, will now be joining and replacing the work of Minister Bibeau, who's been with us for the last 3 years. Secretary Villalobos and Secretary Vilsack. And as you can see, then we have two members from each country. Doug and Kathy Wotecki serve from the United States, and Tony Frank is our steering committee chair and serving as the host institution for the Secretariat. Next slide, please. And today we're going to focus on a little bit of background of the work of the NON and the baseline information that we received and created, and with many of you in partnership from 2020 to current. We put out a survey in 2021, which went to 500 people throughout the three countries. Many of you contributed names and the opportunity to really learn who these people were, and to then send out. We had a good return on information that came back. And we also then went on to create 3 country chapters that were written by country experts from Canada, Mexico, and the United States that formed sort of the genesis and the current situation for agriculture and extension, with 3 very different models, as many of you are aware. I'd also like to acknowledge we have senior staff on our website. You can take a look from all 3 of the countries who do a majority of the work with us, which is super helpful. And we have a small secretariat. As Doug mentioned, we are sponsored by the CSU system, and I thank Rebecca Popara and David Nielsen for joining us on this call. The document itself, which became Feeding North America and Agricultural Extension, we'll dive into a little bit more. Here it is on our website, and it's been translated into 3 languages. CIMMYT, as many of you know, the Center for Maize and Wheat Research in Mexico helped translate into Spanish, and the Ministry of Agriculture in Canada into French. Next slide, please. Here's a little bit of a breakdown of how our survey participants came from country and sector. We'll share these slides later so you can have a little bit more time. I think it's very interesting to note the role of sort of national governments and local governments is almost non-existent within Canada and much larger for Mexico and the US, but yet there's a large amount of private sector that takes place in both of these countries as well. This was a qualitative survey. We were really pleased with the results and that it came through in equal numbers across the 3 countries to begin to build our baseline. Next slide, please. So around our 3 thematic areas that Doug has mentioned, we collected then an overview and of 3 very different models that exist within these 3 countries. And as you can see from some of the top areas of services provided by country, the United States came high in rural community development, nutrition, and financial education, actually, as part of other services provided by Extension in addition to our 3 thematic areas. Next slide, please. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the results by country, and you're welcome to dig a little deeper into that when you're able to look at the publication if you haven't seen it already. Unique to Canada, it's important to note that most of the respondents in the work of what they actually call agroecology is driven by the provinces. It's very much at a local scale without federal funding, and that was a definitive decision by the Canadian government years ago. There's also a very high local focus, which is driving this work and participation. The opportunities that we saw are focusing on improving farmer communication perceptions and the value offerings of ag advisory and extension services, as well as being able to diversify their extension delivery modalities came through. Next slide, please. Within Mexico, unique to Mexico was that the higher financial limitations of farmers and staff. They do not have the luxury, and nor does Canada, of really the land-grant universities and the strong extension programs that have been a part of our reality for so many years. But at the same time, there was strong interest in traditional Indigenous knowledge that they would like the non to be able to focus on and work from. Seed saving and alternative production practices. As we begin to formulate our country work, which Doug will speak to in just a minute, you'll be able to see sort of how these thematic areas are coming together. In opportunities, there was a greater understanding that Mexico wanted to participate in the financial landscape with both formal and informal grants opportunities and partners. And they're very strong. The public-private partnerships within Mexico do help drive much of their extension work and is something that we can learn from as well. Next slide, please. Within the United States, and thank you to all of you who did participate in this survey and were part of this, but it's also important probably to note, this was the year 2021. We were deep in COVID at the time. So I think some of the answers across all 3 countries reflect that. But there was a challenge of not enough staff in the United States and a limited ability to support underrepresented groups came through. The opportunities, however, were increase a local focus, increasing mentoring opportunities between the university and youth organizations such as 4-H and FFA, and then a deeper understanding. People wanted to pursue understanding the barriers and opportunities to serve underrepresented groups. So that came through in our survey as well. Next slide, please. So what we did with this information then in producing the document and the study on Feeding North America, we used it as the background then to conduct 3 international convenings, for each country last fall. So country convenings were held virtually in order to help us unpack what we learned through the chapters and through the survey in the report. So we had over 150 people participating from the 3 countries, and we dug deeper into our thematic areas. And this is some of what we heard and took away, that there's a need for greater mapping and funding of expertise to emphasize knowledge transfer within biodefense and biosecurity. And we're pleased to let you all know that Eden, the Extension Disaster and Education Network, has been with us from the very beginning, and they would really like to take a larger role in this work and to help us as we develop. Their work has thus far been very focused on the United States, but they're interested in performing baseline study and information gathering between Canada and Mexico and the United States to take forward some of these issues. We'll be discussing that in our October meeting. Soil health and water management, how to translate science and to precision agriculture and AI, what's coming up, what's coming down the pike, and what do we need to be aware of to create successful models. Building the next generation of leaders. This has already been discussed, but is at the topic of our 3 areas that we decided to really focus on in development of the GFROS annual meeting, which we'll discuss in a moment, because we were asked by GFROS to actually support and put on their meeting this year. And then equity, inclusion, and communication was included in all 3 of the convenings. We covered the Mexico convening in Spanish and provided translation for that into English. And it's really fascinating to see sort of underrepresented people's indigenous knowledge. How does that translate across our 3 countries? What are we doing and what do we need to continue to do moving forward? Next slide, please. Now, pop it back to you, Doug, to cover some of what we've done in this recent couple of months.
All right, thank you, Carrie. And we've just now in the last 10 minutes have provided a foundation and overview of the work that we're doing. And we are excited now that we're going to be able to do some public launch and try to get the program established in North America and start moving forward. And a couple of things I would say is that we were very cautious and have been very cautious that we're not trying to step into spaces where there's already people doing that work. We are not here to be competitive in nature. In fact, we consider ourselves to be connectors. There's a lot of good work out there being done independently, and we feel like we can provide a platform to bring those groups together. And the other thing that it took me a while to understand is that NON is not internationally focused. It is focused within North America. The international opportunity is to learn from each other and how we can do seminars, bring on experts, share research, and we think those are all areas that will strengthen what we're currently doing in North America and help our programs be stronger as we connect with local producers. So it really is meant to be, at the end of the day, a very locally driven program. Next. So what do we see coming out of these opportunities to what our work plan looks like? And so we've got some immediate things that we're working on, and we're going through this very quickly. Rebecca will be working with Sandy, and it looks like she's already posting some things in the chat box. Thank you, Rebecca. The goal that Carrie and I had to give you this big overview, but then you have to drill down a little bit deeper or contact Carrie or myself, and we'd be glad to help walk through this. Let's go down to what I think is maybe the most important, the conversation and future work streams. We're looking at potential non-extension exchange programs so we can share time and learning best practices and how we see success in other countries. We really think that we have extension, education, and engagement opportunities. We're thinking long-term. Can we offer certificate programs or degree programs? You know, in our country, we're hiring our county extension agents at bachelor's and master's level for the most part. But when they get in that job and maybe start working with climate reduction or cover crops, or even how do you help do strategic planning in rural communities, could there be some certificate programs that we help them be better extension professionals? And then finally, we're also saying, okay, there's outside the United States, there's this large private sector ag education, ag outreach. It could be a certified crop advisor or others. And how can we connect them to the work that's already taken place that will help us move forward in really the outreach of what we think are the mission critical elements that NON will provide. Next. And then finally, we're doing something pretty exciting. And Carrie already mentioned connecting with Eden, but we want to create a country hub that really starts help us build from what currently exists programmatically and strengthen existing support and partnerships. And so, as I said earlier, there's a lot of people out there doing this work, and we feel like we can be a catalyst, a facilitator, a connector, and bringing this work together. And I know both John and Tom, being from the International Ag section, sees the strength of introducing these groups to each other to help us plan how do we move forward collaboratively that will help us all be more successful in our mission areas. Next. Carrie, back to you.
Doug. So our meeting that is taking place in October, and I'm pleased to see it follows your meeting in Tucson the prior week, and then actually is fit right in between Falcon leaders coming into Denver the 13th through the 16th of October. But we will be focusing now on strengthening and building the next generation of leaders in agriculture for this meeting. We will have 3 days. 2 are in plenary and discussion groups, and the middle day being a field trip out to farms and ranches along the Front Range of Colorado, and then coming into our new CSU Spur campus in Denver, which is located at the site of the National Western Stock Show. This is a global awareness campus that we have put forth that has a K through 12 opportunities and focus between food, water, and One Health. And it's an exciting sort of next step into building bridges and opportunities for the best and brightest minds to consider going into agriculture and seeing themselves in careers in ag. So we're looking forward to that and to hosting you all. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the program, the members of the program committee, and many of you will see your institutions there and listed. We're very grateful for their help. They've been identifying speakers and participants and giving us ideas basically since April we began meeting. So we are working together to really formulate. It's not a large meeting. I just want to say the GFROST meetings in the past maybe come in around, 100 people or so. The largest was in South Korea several years ago with maybe 300. We'll be happy if we come in around 200 or 250, really just to create the conversations and the dialogue that we are looking for and to really hear from everyone. Another important part of what we'll be doing, as Doug mentioned, we're really formulating the country hubs. And we'll have a conversation around what each of our 3 country hubs look like, in addition to how we fit into GFROST's network. So that will take place on the 3rd day. And we're looking forward to those conversations and to having the right people in the room and with us to really pursue that. Next slide, please. So here's our QR code. It will also be in the information that's distributed after the meeting. And as Doug said, please get in touch with us. We're looking forward to really being able to feature North American Ag in this meeting, as well as really focus on the relationships built in our global capacity of joining GFROST. So we hope you'll consider coming. I know many of you already are, and thank you very much. Next slide. There we are. Okay, Doug, over to you. Do we have time for a few questions?
I'm going to roll it back over to Beverly, but just say thank you once again for the invitation. I know for about the last year and a half, maybe you've heard myself and or Curia talking about this, and it's really moved very quickly from a conceptual basis to live practice, and we're excited about creating the network that has value for North America, but more importantly showcases the outstanding work that's being done in extension across our country, and hopefully provide additional resources for successful programming at the local level.
And we do have time for a question. Are there any questions?
Ashley's joining us. She'll be there, and maybe others. I know the GAIN folks will actually be putting on a panel and a discussion. We're waiting to hear. Manners is coming. Falcon will be there, as well as International 4-H. And working with our National 4-H as well. So we really encourage you to come and be a part of it, please, if this fits your schedule, and if it's also an area of collaboration and interaction that you'd like to be a part of.
And I can just real quick from our perspective, it's been a really good group. We've also been involving just some of our team from our Ag International office within our institute as well, and that they collaborate a lot with us from Extension. So it's a great connection with NON as well. So looking forward to the meeting.
And Kara, did you put the link to the registration for the meeting? Or so we'll have that too,
Yeah.
that people, if they haven't registered. And when is the registration deadline?
September 16th. We've got hotel rooms in Denver, in 2 different hotels. And then actually the GFROS board will also be meeting prior to our meeting. So we're working hard. David Nielsen is working also with us and has had extensive work in Africa. We'll be bringing in quite a few African leaders from the AU and from the SROs there. So we're working across both the GFROS networks. USAID will be with us. There'll be quite a few that were even the original founders and members who created GFROS around a decade ago. So thanks. It'd be great to continue this conversation in North America for the first time.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and keep your questions too. We'll have some time at the end. So our next panelist will continue this conversation around international agriculture, rural development. Our panel is John Vrynes, who is the chair of ECOP and director of Extension Global Initiatives at the University of Minnesota. And then Tom Thompson is the chair-elect and associate dean and director of global programs at Virginia Tech. So I'm not quite sure who is starting first, John or Tom.
Let's have Tom go first to do ICOP, and then I can do GAIN.
Okay, great. I will turn it over to you, Tom.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. Just a moment. Okay, I hope you can see my screen now. I'm going to keep my camera off as I often have bandwidth issues here in this rural location where I am today. So, and I've given John Vrynes permission to let me know if my presentation is not coming through well, and he could take over if necessary, but I hope everything works here. So I really appreciate.
Thank you, Tom. Looks good.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity from ECOP to talk to you about the International Agriculture Section, or IAS, and the International Committee on Organization and Policy, or ICOP. Some of you are no doubt aware of us, but perhaps some of you are not, and you're probably not aware of some of the recent things we've been working on, and I'd like to update you on that. So as was said in the introduction, I'm at Virginia Tech. I am the chair-elect of ICOP, which means I'll assume the chair in this fall at the annual meeting and then hold that for 2 years. I've been involved with IAS since I took this role back in late 2016, and it's been a great opportunity for me. I hope that the folks at your organizations, at your universities who are working in these areas are involved. I've certainly found it very beneficial, both in terms of professional development and networking, but also just meeting some great people who are interested in some of the same things that I am. So the vision of IAS is to, as we say, promote, facilitate, and support the international agricultural, food, and environmental programs and activities of members of the BAA. Who are we? Well, IAS is open to any individuals. It's not limited to one per organization, from any APLU member organization with an interest in international agriculture. And I would say most of those who are in IAS are primarily interested in either research or extension on an international stage, but we're certainly not limited to that. Now, ICOP is the IAS Executive Leadership Committee that I'll define for you in just a moment. And at each APLU university, there is an opportunity for the dean of the College of Agriculture or its equivalent to identify one individual as the international representative, and that individual will have voting rights to any decisions requested by the Board on Agriculture Assembly. Okay, these are our officers and representatives currently. John Bryans is the chair. Certainly have enjoyed working with John. He brings a tremendous amount of experience and institutional memory to this role. And I'm looking forward to him being the past chair while I'm chair, because I'll certainly need his help. Our secretary is Jennifer Kushner, University of Wisconsin. Our past chair is David Gray of Dalhousie University. So we are an international organization. Our representatives to the BAC is Kevin Fitzsimmons at University of Arizona. To the Committee on Legislation and Policy is Tom Gill at Tennessee. For the Policy Board of Directors, we have two representatives, Jennifer Kushner and Jose Cisneros at NC State University. We have a liaison to the Commission on International Initiatives, and that's Melanie Miller Foster at Penn State. And our CARET representative, who's fairly new in the role, is H.C. Russell from Missouri. And until just a couple of months ago, it was Rebecca Wolf, who was a CARET representative from South Dakota. So I'd like to take just a few minutes then to tell you about a couple of activities we've been working on recently. The first is our interest in boosting the USDA NIFA budget for international activities. And the current state of play is that there are two programs, if that's the correct word, that are currently authorized in the Farm Bill. And one of them is called Partnerships to Build Capacity in International Agricultural Research, Extension, and Teaching. That's authorized at $10 million annually, but is currently unfunded. The second is Competitive Grants for International Agricultural Science and Education. It's authorized at $5 million annually, but is currently unfunded. I believe, and John could correct me if I've mistaken the date, but I believe these have been unfunded since about 2012. Now, before that, when the programs were funded during a 7-year period, 106 awards were made to 62 different universities in 38 states. So this was, there was a lot of widespread impacts from this program. Now, what we're recommending and hoping for the current Farm Bill is to combine these two programs into one authority under the NIFA Center for International Programs, and to reauthorize them for a total of $20 million annually, which would represent an increase of a third of what's authorized, but it would represent essentially an infinite increase since these have not been funded in a number of years. We see this as a way that that could help to revitalize the NIFA's Office for International Programs. They've been undergoing some transition for a number of years, but we were pleased at the joint COPS meeting to learn that Davida Tanguy, who's been with USDA for a number of years and is quite familiar with international programs. She's going to be leading the transition, I believe, in the International Programs Office. And we hope that means that there will be a permanent director that will be appointed. Also, at the joint COPS meeting, we had the opportunity to sit down with Dr. Misra for 30 minutes or so and to learn about his priorities as the new NIFA director. And we're very pleased that he was very supportive of international activities and the International Programs Office. Of course, that means that that we have work to do in order to get that authorized and funded. So that's really the first thing we've been working on. Why do we want to do this? Well, these grants would be a great way to strengthen international partnerships through collaboration and exchanges and partnerships. And we think these can bring multiple benefits to our universities and our students, and funding of these grants would strengthen the NIFA Center for International Programs. As I mentioned before, there were 62 universities that benefited from these programs before, and we're hopeful that that can happen again. We're working hard now to gather success stories from this funding. Since these programs have not been funded in a number of years, a lot of this information is a bit dated, but thanks to John and other colleagues in IAS, we're trying to gather information to strengthen the case for both authorizing and funding these grant programs through NIFA. The second activity that I'll mention is our development of a roadmap and a strategy that we call Feeding the World, a North American Strategy for Global Agriculture. You may hear a few echoes of what you just heard about NAN, because this is focused on a strategy involving the three major North American countries. Our first step included a Delphi study or a Delphi survey of members of IAS and others who would be interested. We administered this to ask for, what are the most important issues that IAS and ICOP should be working on. I believe John led that effort, so thanks to him for that. And I think we had about a 25 to 30% response rate on this survey. The top three issues identified that we could work on and focus on in this roadmap included climate change, sustainability, and agricultural productivity. Following that, we decided that getting together and meeting would be a great way to move this process along. And so Jennifer Kushner at Wisconsin and John Bryans from Minnesota submitted or led the submission of a USDA NIFA conference grant, and we were successful with that. And that then allowed us to bring the International Ag Section and friends, including some NIFA officials we heard from and about NAN and GAIN at that meeting as well. And we had Canadian and Mexican representatives who attended virtually. At that time, travel to the US was still a bit challenging for our friends in Mexico and Canada, so they did attend virtually. Doug Steele was there, and that was in February 2022. We spent a couple of days together working on this strategy and this roadmap, and there were folks representing 20 universities and 2 federal agencies there. So what I'm showing on the screen now is really the outcome of that, and there's a lot of information here. We'd be glad to share this with you if or share it with the organizers of the meeting and include it. But what I'd like to do is just focus on the 7th point, solution and practice. And this is a look forward to what could really help put this roadmap into action. If we could, for example, convince the funding agencies in all 3 countries to fund areas of mutual interest, and this would be a great way to build partnerships that could then really establish North America as a leader in global agriculture. Developing a multilateral strategy that would involve longer funding cycles. Of course, ultimately, it's funding that could make something like this work and be effective. We would need to identify a backbone organization to coordinate North American collaboration, encourage our university leaders and our college leaders to support and recognize international work by our faculty, and strengthen participation of marginalized scientific communities and minority serving institutions, for example. So this is a very aspirational document, and we'll be working on it, I'm sure, for a number of years, but we certainly appreciate your knowledge of it and your support for it as you can. So with that, I will close, and I'll say if you do have questions, either in this forum or later, John Bryans or myself would be glad to answer any of those. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Tom, for presenting ICOP. And I'm going to pick up and share with you the section that is a smaller piece of international extension across the land-grant university systems. And what we're doing here is we have a program that is called GAIN. I want to thank you all for the invitation to present the Globalizing Extension Innovation Network on this ECOP's First Friday. And what I'd like to do is just kind of give you some background on what's been happening over the last 3 years with a group of colleagues. So who are we? The formation of GAIN occurred through one of Extension Foundation's Impact Collaborative Summit programs. It was designed to gather extension representatives from across the country to collaborate on developing a framework and focused program planning. The result of this collaborative we came up with is GAIN, Globalizing Extension Innovation Network. The GAIN council members actually represent 13 different universities across the system. And we are holding monthly meetings as we continue discussions on planning and sharing ideas and perceptions of internationalizing and globalizing extension across the systems that you see on the screen. Our purpose was really to begin to pull together the collective knowledge and experiences that are found within the cooperative extension system. People seem to be working individually. They didn't have ideas, avenues for sharing ideas. And so what we did is this space is for collaboration. It's connection, enabling global engagement. It's impact sharing. It provides visibility. It provides advocacy for the extension systems being involved in globalizing extension, and also to look at resource acquisition. It's a lot easier if we share it as opposed to doing everything alone individually. So why does extension abroad matter? Extension really enables U.S. universities to remain competitive and innovative in a rapidly changing world. It's much more than just our students traveling and studying abroad. It's much more than our research collaborations. The U.S. extension system is really viewed as the model across the world, and we have the experience of working collectively in rural communities. Globalizing allows cooperative extension systems to serve both new and more diverse audiences at home. So you gain cross-cultural skills, but you bring them back home to be able to work with our audiences here. The opportunity provides enriching opportunities that produce global citizens. There are some universities that, as they participate in extension programs, they will take educators to accompany the groups along with students. And so you have that mixing of both the teaching, the extension expertise that's found at the land-grant universities. And it strengthens long-term institutional capacity through our research networks that may be connected, our knowledge of policy changes across countries, the market systems across countries. And so there's a lot of benefits that come into our individual institutions. So how does globalizing enhance our work at home? Extension educators are agents of learning, growth, and change. Our core values were founded on principles of service, leadership, self-knowledge, and open-mindedness. Our commitment to building better communities is not limited to our respective counties, states, or even the country. Rather, our ability to embrace our position with a global society and build meaningful partnerships with people and institutions abroad allows us to fulfill our collective mission in today's world. So the US agriculture industry has always been global, Today, almost all food systems around the world are connected. Our research and extension efforts abroad contribute towards the global fight against hunger. They build new adaptive food systems for a changing climate, and they create opportunities to exchange knowledge and scientific ideas, all while gaining pivotal lessons and experiences to apply at home. Our work globally also boosts local economies by increasing market opportunities internationally. For extension leadership teams, the task of globalizing extension efforts is a strategic priority. Almost all of our land-grant universities have faculty, extension specialists, and administrators conducting international research and extension programming and teaching students abroad. The cumulative force of these efforts signals to the rest of the campus, the larger community, and beyond that our institutions are powerful global players capable of translating our expertise and experience in research, extension, and teaching to anywhere in the world on all topics related to rural development, urban farming, nutrition, youth leadership, and beyond. These types of initiatives elevate our institutional profiles, making our campuses more attractive to prospective students, as well as faculty and extension members. University graduates enter a world where global competencies and knowledge are increasingly in demand by employers. Global extension efforts can be linked to study abroad programs and virtual global classrooms to provide our students with professional and exciting global opportunities in a field they might not have previously considered. For land-grant universities to remain competitive in higher education, it is becoming essential to establish a strong global presence. Global projects and initiatives provide meaningful professional development opportunities for our extension specialists and faculty, regardless of their level of international experience. These experiences both reinforce and expand upon the skills honed at home, and they push our people out of their comfort zone and into challenging new growth and learning zones, increasing their effectiveness in interdisciplinary environments. County agents have a wide variety of skills and knowledge related to their work that can be applied and shared globally. These experiences can have immense value and impact for them individually, as well as their larger extension units and the communities they serve. By lending expertise to global projects, both virtually and in person, county agents advance the body of research in their field and get the chance to collaborate with new and diverse colleagues in the US and with partners abroad. The impact of travel, even if infrequent or brief, is difficult to overstate. During a mission abroad, extension staff, faculty, and students reimagine and refine their cross-cultural competency skills and consider new and innovative ways of communicating information and collaborating across different stakeholders. Through travel abroad, we are called to be creative and adaptive, translating skill sets into this new context, all while forming new collaborative partnerships and making a difference in some of the world's most vulnerable communities. This experience is highly energizing. New perspectives and skills are brought back home and integrated into our extension units, and those who have the opportunity to travel internationally are better equipped to work across diverse populations within their own community and share knowledge gained with the people they serve. Through work abroad, colleagues may get exposed to issues that are only starting to emerge in their home state, such as drought, displacement of people due to natural disaster, or food safety issues. It adds to increased understanding of the challenges of immigrants adjusting to living in the United States. Global and international programs are not new to the cooperative extension system. In 2012, the University of Minnesota was awarded a grant to conduct the Global Network Survey within Extension to quantify the human resource and experience within the nation's extension system. This information is self-reported, and it shows experiences in 158 different countries in every corner of the world, and the 91 different cultural groups living in the USA touched by extension programs. We use the term global because if we state international, it implies it is overseas. Yet extension educators are working cross-culturally at home with immigrant communities who have now settled in our respective states. In the spirit of the whole of government programs, the cooperative extension system contributed to the transition in Poland to a market economy after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Cooperative extension system supported the U.S. Department of Defense and the provincial reconstruction teams in Iraq when the goal was to rebuild the rural communities. And the cooperative extension system was tapped when required in Afghanistan to rebuild communities and the extension education program for the 21st century. But as we know, consistent and continuous programming is the only way to impact sustained change in communities over time. Working abroad requires sophisticated systems for finance and logistics. Whether it's encouraging your agents to take 2 weeks for a farmer-to-farmer volunteer experience, or putting together a team to land a large-scale funded project, cooperative extension needs bold leadership and well-integrated infrastructure in place to support these endeavors. To manage a multi-million-dollar USAID or USDA-funded cooperative agreement with a partner in the Global South, extension units and their administrative teams must have on deck high-quality proposal writing, strong fiscal controls, dependable and supportive administrative systems, evaluation specialists, international travel coordinators, and more. Once these systems are in place and skill sets are developed, our institutions vastly increase their ability to go for even bigger grants and funding opportunities in the future. There's a lot of sharing about different systems across the membership of GAIN, and so we learn on best practices, even internal to our organizations. Our goal at land-grant institutions is to create a transformational learning space for students and employees to become global citizens capable of addressing the great challenges that face us today. Only from a collaborative global mindset will we succeed in mitigating the effects of climate change, producing new adaptive food systems, win the fight for racial and economic justice, achieve true gender equality, and protect our natural resources for future generations. From a practical policy perspective, the U.S. benefits from international collaboration and development across multiple sectors: economic, political, environmental, health, and social. Our engagement abroad through well-established networks means increased trade and opportunities for private sector investment, exchange of scientific ideas, improved food safety and quality, and cross-cultural awareness that leads to increased tolerance and cooperation between nations. And most importantly, we are working to build a better world for future generations of producers and consumers. On behalf of the GAIN Council, thank you for listening, and I'm ready to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, John and Tom. Any questions? Or any questions for our first panel? Doug and Carrie are still on the call. Questions at all, comments?
So John, is the biggest roadblock right now lack of funding? Because it seems like you've got a really good structure in place. I think you made a comment about trying to get all three governments to provide some investment to move it forward. What are your thoughts on the next big jump?
I would say from the perspective of the universities in international programs, we do not have any capacity funding through our government. And I think that's the challenge for many administrators at the universities. If there's money, they're more than willing to put time and effort into it. And without the capacity, our approach has been to go after competitive grants. And if we can just get the appropriations in the federal budget, it would give us a great chance of being able to build those partnerships.
John, there was a question in the chat about programs in Ghana or Guam. Are you aware of any international extension programs there?
I do know that the South Carolina State University has been working quite a bit in Ghana. There have been other universities. The University of Maryland Eastern Shore has also had extensive experience in Ghana. I'm not aware of any programs that have been happening recently in Guam, though. I see David has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks for that. Really interesting to see what you're thinking about in these programs. I noted that a lot of the rationale or a lot of the things you emphasized in why these are valuable programs and activities focus particularly on why they're valuable here in this country for us, even though it's work internationally. Are you also, is doing things that are valuable in the countries that people are going to, is that also part of the objective function, so to speak? Or you didn't speak so much about that as you did why it's valuable here, but I'm just wondering what you're thinking about that part of it.
We are thinking about it, and I'll give you an example of what we're doing here at the University of Minnesota. Minnesota has 10% of the Kenyan diaspora living in the state. Of that, there are about 7,000 or 8,000 of them that come from Kisii and Nyamira County in southwestern Kenya. We are partnering, we have worked with 200 women farmers growing leafy vegetable crops, and we have part of our horticulture team, our food systems team, that are working with Kenyan migrant farmers here on the exact same vegetables. And so soil quality, soil nutrient requirements and things, we're trying to learn from one another on both sides, but bringing this together through the traditional practices. So I think there's a lot of examples. Virginia Tech just had an article published that talks about how they are working with the Afghan refugees that have moved into Virginia, and they're now creating a sheep cooperative. And Virginia Tech is helping them work with the sheep and sheep ranching in the context of the United States. So I think there is a real lot of cross-cultural international learning that can happen through programs like this.
Mm.
If I could say also too, David, one thing that we're seeing here in Minnesota, and I know other my colleagues, is that there is the question of why are we doing international work when the need is so great here? And I think
Right.
John's example was exactly right. So it benefits us and it benefits the country. It's just not one way that we're both benefiting from that. And I think that that's something that we use quite a bit to talk about the importance of that cultural relationship, working with thinking international programs are both nationally and internationally. I see there's a question. There was, I think Ashley put in that Hawaii is working with University of Guam. And there's another one. If you're interested in working with Guam, there's a connect there too. Any other questions, comments? If not, we are 1 minute before the hour. I would like to thank our panelists again, Doug and Carrie and John and Tom, for the work that you're doing to help all of us, think about our programs both here, in the US and how we can reach out, globally, internationally, and also here on our North American continent. And so we really appreciate that. And I think we need to continue to have these conversations about how we can be more effective and also how we can find how to fund this work. I think there is that we have the interest, but now trying to funding to do it, to work on that is very important. Again, just a couple housekeeping. There's no first Friday in September. You could take your September off, and we will be back with first Friday in October. If you have a chance to do the survey, please do that. And again, thank you everyone for being here today. We had a great group. I hope that this helped you think about some of the programs that are happening in your state and in your system. Please reach out to any of the panelists that were on the panel today if you have any questions or want to make some connections. And with that, I hope everybody has a great weekend. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.